Hello, 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 hello. Good morning. Welcome to the live show. Let's start it off the right way this time. None of this faffing about, as my friend Cara Pilkington might say. We're going to pour the tea right into the teacup. Oh, baby. I've been going back and listening to old episodes of the Ricky Gervais show. Most people know Ricky Gervais is the guy who co-created The Office, the UK Office, which a lot of people haven't seen these days, which is quite something. And then he wrote Extras, and then Derek, and then his most recent show is Afterlife, which is also fantastic and very empathic. And so 15 years ago, when Ricky had just finished working on Extras, his second show, he and Steve Merchant, his co-writer, and a man named Carl Pilkington did a series of podcasts back when podcasts had first become even a thing. And so they had the Guinness Book of World Records, the most downloaded podcast, and it was a really big deal. Anyhow, I've been listening to those episodes, and Carl Pilkington, who I'm going to put his name in the comments here, Carl Pilkington, I really recommend you look him up and read some of what he's written and even listen to the conversations he gets in with Ricky and Steve. And I'm going to tell you why. Hello, one person watching currently. This is exclusive just for you right now. You're the person that's getting this exclusive. Oh, there's two people now, so it's no longer exclusive. Sorry, exclusive's over. Anyhow, Carl Pilkington, he did a show that was on Netflix where Ricky and Steve Merchant sent him off to various parts around the world and enjoyed the reaction, how Carl went through this. So the reason I recommend you check out Carl is because yeah, big time lame. Hey, Evan. Carl really embodies the full expression of wisdom. And what happens is as you listen to him speak, the first reaction I think most people have is this guy's a fucking moron. And his moronness comes off. It's very funny. He says things like one of the quotes he was listening to the other day was like, "What's the point of jellyfish? They're 97% water. Just make the other 3% water. We'll have more water. Get rid of them." That's the sort of stuff that Carl says. And so he's a great example of how the shadow of wisdom can often it can blind us to the truth that lies below. And the wisdom that Carl embodies is a lot like the wisdom of a child. The wisdom of a child that would have them ask the sort of questions that we as adults have long since stopped being able to ask because we're just like, well, obviously this is the way the world works. So famously, Einstein, when he was developing his theory of relativity, one of the fundamental discoveries in the theory of relativity is it doesn't matter how fast you are traveling, you will perceive a light beam to move away from you at the exact same speed. So it always, no matter how fast you seem to be going, light will occur like it's moving away from you at 300 meters per second squared. I think that's, or 300 meters a second? 300,000 meters a second. That sounds right. So anyhow, this is quite astounding, right? This is imagine there's someone in a car that's driving and they're moving away from you at a particular rate. What they're saying, what this theory says is no matter how fast you move in your car, that car is still going to move away from you at the same rate. That's a really hard, whoa, what the heck? So light always, how does it do that? Does it speed up? Does it know that I'm moving this fast? What does it do? Morning, Lydia. So anyhow, the way that Einstein arrived at this stunning kind of conclusion, awareness, was he was asking himself a really dumb question, much like Carl would. The question he asked himself is, okay, let's imagine I was running. This is Einstein running, and I caught up to a light beam. What would I see? Would I just see a static wave of light, still at that point, because I'm running at the same speed? And from that question, he started to, a lot more followed. Now, the thing about that is most of us would never ask that question because it's so stupid. And so Carl Pilkington really embodies the wisdom that's present in the archetype of the fool, the willingness to ask the question that's going to get us laughed at, the willingness to stand on the rug knowing it's going to be pulled out from under our feet, because that's how we learn to trust ourselves. That's how we find our wisdom. So if you're kind of curious about I'd like to get better at spotting being, like to get better at seeing the light behind the shadow that presents on the surface, Carl Pilkington's a great man to go listen to. Just Google him, look him up, find a YouTube video of him speaking, and then just see if you can hear the wisdom underneath. Anyhow, we're not here to talk about Carl. Who else is here? Hello, Lydia. What up, Evan? Whoever else these 7 people are, put your name in the comments. It's more fun, I promise. We can chat together. We've got some juicy topics. Anything I want to tell? Oh, okay. Well, here's some stuff I'll catch you up on. I've finished reading this book right here, A Shift in Being. Here is the spine test. Remember, the spine test is where we look at the book and we see all of the places where I've bookmarked the book with these tabs, these little brass tabs that I get from Lee Valley. See them? So they just mark your page. Hey, David. So the spine test is how good a book was it? How many parts did I read? Hey, Heather. Did I not put? Oh, you can see the topics are in the description. They're right there. You can see the topics I have. They're all right there. If you want to add one, Heather, let us know. You can put them in right now. So the spine test is how many places did I mark this book? This is probably the most marked book I've ever read. I've read, good morning, Tommy. I've read a ton of books on coaching. I don't tend to read them so much anymore because I find that as you do more transformational work, a lot of the wisdom, brilliance, access to spirit, a lot of this stuff starts to come from within. What I don't mean by that is like I'm smarter than all the other authors. It just becomes that like there's a point where reading what someone else has distinguished becomes sort of less interesting than discovering the path that exists and always has exists internally that is unfolding through you. So somehow there's like a subtle shift that sort of happens there. Well, that's cool. So Heather, you're reading this. Raf, you just got a copy of it. That's fantastic. I want more people to read this book. It's a seminal book on coaching. It's big, but the distinction between transformational work and transactional work and everything that comes from that and what is required and what we're really bringing into the space with our clients, book does a beautiful job articulating it. We need more writing like that. And it also, he also is very clear you can't do that work on your own. So for people that want to coach and be transformational, they recognize I can't do that by myself. That's not the way it works. And the one thing he, let me just find it. I was reading something yesterday that I really loved. Oh yeah, here it is. No person is the catalyst for their own awakening. That honor belongs to spirit, the evolutionary life force, the one presence that lives in and through us all. Transformational change, therefore, does not need to be driven or forced. It needs to be allowed. We'll talk about that too. Good. I can't remember how to say your name, but I think you told me it's like John in English. Joa. I really want to know what the tilde over the A. Someone who's joined the Forge this year, his name's Alesh, and his S has a little tilde over it, which turns the S into sh, like a SH sound. But I can't imagine how I do that with a vowel. Yeah, that's confusing me. Daniel, thoughts on overthinking and overplanning? I'll come to that. We'll hit on that as we get through these topics today. Get through them. Let's get through these. Let's blast through this bullshit that we've got. Okay, I've got a new system that's kind of working for me, which is people send me topics sometimes throughout the week. And so now what I do is I have I've been using this thing called Roam, and I have a page for every live show. And so that live show is like June 18th. And then every time someone sends me something, I copy what they've written, I put it in there under their name. And then when it comes time on Friday, it's all laid out on a page, neat and tidy for me to get it into these topics. That's the nerdy project manager that I used to be long ago. The nerdy part's still here. But that part of me really enjoys that. Like, oh, so efficient. Hell yeah. Organizations. I imagine it is hard to write the sound. I'm going to have a hard time with that. John, though, right? That's what we're going with? Is that what we've agreed to? Okay. So first topic we're going to hit on, I'm going to add yours in here right now, Daniel, overthinking versus which was it? Over planning. And I don't think you're talking about versus, you're just wondering like, what are my thoughts on overthinking and or over planning? Let me know if I've got that right. The simple summarized thoughts are just don't do it, but I'll elaborate a little more on that because it's obviously don't do it. It's not so easy to not do the stuff, even if we know that it's not working for us. Okay, so our first topic is going to be reserving the right to hold the turd holding. And so what David asks, David Medina, what's up, my friend? Says, if you do a live this week, could you speak in our leadership? We let go of the right to hang in our shit and be willing to stay in the conversation no matter what. So I think at this point, the first thing I have to do is talk about like a gradient for someone's leadership. And when I talk about a gradient for their leadership, I'm not talking about their leadership like in an organization or something like that. I'm talking about just their ability to show up in the moment. So I'm going to use the Forge as the example because the way we develop transformational coaching, being, and leadership in that structure, I guess I'll call it organization. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, guys. Is with gradients. So that'll make it. That's why I'm using that as the example. So when people first come through this structure, we are not aware of our blind spots. And for the most part, most of us really think we are, but we're not. We think we have some kind of idea. You know, when, like if I asked you, how do you get in your way? You have some answers for me. Or you're like, what do you not like about yourself? Or blah, 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 blah. And you've got answers. And that's what most of us believe is our blind spot. So I'd be like, oh, I can be really perfectionistic. And sometimes I'm just trying to come up with some for myself. Sometimes when I'm attached, like when I want something to happen and it's not, I can get kind of all the fun leaves, and then I get very militant and rigid about people doing stuff the right way, blah, blah, blah. So that's often what we think our blind spots are going to be. It's the stuff we know, and we're going to get the reflection of the stuff we know. And so at the earliest level of this kind of transformational work is actually having your blind spots reflected to you. And the way that often looks, like one of the examples is we'll have everyone in the group, after we've created a container, after we've gotten clear this is what people are here for, after people have agreed, blah, 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 we've set it all up, we'll have people in the group reflect the impact of the way someone has been showing up. So this would be like going from, what does this person do that kind of puts you off? Well, they're very perfectionistic, and Adam gets very rigid, and there's not much fun in the space when he's like that. I'm like, that's the thing I know, right? So I can be with that because I already know it. Then the next question would be, great, and what's the impact? Like, what happens when you're hit with that? And that would be the point where the person starts to share the stuff that I wouldn't be aware of. This would be like, what happens when I start showing up this way to them? And they might be like, well, first of all, I feel like I'm doing everything wrong. Second, I feel like Adam's a jerk. Third, I just kind of want to walk away and stop playing with them because it's not really worth it. You know, like, yeah, we're going to get something done, but these people over here are playing and having fun while they're doing stuff. I would way rather be a part of that. And so that, as we start to draw that out and get clear on the impact, that is really hard for us to be with. That has us getting past the stuff we already know to the stuff the rest of the world just doesn't tell us about, right? We do our patterns, the world bumps into them. And then what happens is, because we're engaged, I guess I could say correctly, in being really polite and civil with one another, they don't tell me the impact, largely because I don't want to hear it. They just leave. So this is like, you probably know people like this in your life. An example might be someone who complains a lot. They complain all the time. And so what you do is you just decide slowly over time, I'm just going to spend less time with that person because they're just a walking complaint. Every time I'm with them, our conversation for 2 hours is about what's wrong in the world. Well, that's kind of tiresome. That's not that fun. I don't feel uplifted. I'm walking around like this. I'm not jogging like that. I'm walking around like this. after a couple hours with them. It's very bad for my scoliosis. My spine is getting damaged by the conversation they're in. So that's the impact that no one tells us. They just act into or act from the impact we're having. That's the stuff that's really hard for us to get. Hope everyone's clear so far. If I could just get, I'm following. Someone we need one person, a leader in the comments to say I'm following, so I know this is making sense. You guys are on this journey with me, helping me. So as someone reflects this to us, what happens initially is a rejection of it or a rejection of them. Because what we're getting is feedback that almost always is in contrast to the way we're committed to being. I don't want to be the sort of person that's not fun and that's unpleasant and that makes people choose to go do something else. Who I'm committed to being is fun. Awesome. Thanks, Raph. Who I'm committed to being is fun and enjoyable and like bring play with leadership and have you along for the ride and want you to come with me. So when you give me, hey, Miles, good morning. When you give me or when I receive the feedback that runs counter to the view I have for myself, it causes dissonance. And when I'm confronted with that, a couple things happen. Ultimately, what I try to do is resolve that. So I might try to, one way I can resolve that is instantly fix the feedback you've given me. Oh, great. I can totally see how that would be the impact I have. I figured out what I'm going to do in the future. In the future, I'm going to always smile and tell jokes along with being rigid. So now I've fixed it. It's all shiny and I don't have to feel the discomfort of getting this feedback. And what that does is actually fixing it that quickly eliminates my ability to sit in it and then actually have the growth happen that's there to happen. I jump straight to fixing. This is one of the ways people step over their breakthrough, even though they're doing it with like an earnest like desire to grow. It's their earnestness that has them step beyond the very thing that would set them free. So that's one way we resolve the dissonance. Another way we might do it is we make the person giving us this feedback wrong. Oh, that's just Kenny's stuff. Kenny always thinks that people aren't any fun. He needs everything to be a floating balloon filled with helium. Fuck Kenny. Kenny's the problem. So now I've removed the feedback because I've made this person that gave it an idiot or wrong or gotten rid of them. And now I can go back to just being with this part of myself, the identity that I have. A third way that we can do this, oh, you guys are great. Thanks everyone for sharing your following. A third way we can resolve this dissonance first. This is the bad feedback I don't like. This is the version of me that I see. A third way we can deal with this is we can exceptionalize it. So I can explain why this piece of feedback in this instance that I've gotten, that's an exception. That's not normally the way I am. I did that because I was really tired. That day that Roger's speaking of, that's not who I am as a person. Yeah, sometimes I can have that impact. It's just because, you know, I was having a tired day and I hadn't eaten. Oh, okay, great. Now I've exceptionalized that so I can basically get that away and I can be back here with the image that I have. So that's the first, I'm going to draw this out again. First, we get the feedback that no one else in the world is giving us. That puts our blind spot in front of us, not like an intellectual thing, but as an experience in the moment. Intellectual is safe. It's on the blackboard. Oh yeah, blackboard. And then this happens and then that. This is like, boom, the lived in experience of being with you is this is the impact. That causes that dissonance. And the first thing that happens then is we try to explain why it's not there. So basically what's happening there is we are trying innocently not to be with the feedback we just got. That's what happens in all of these cases I just described. We get to remove that and then we don't have to be with it. So that's the first thing. The second thing that happens after that, after people have been supported with that, is that they then get mad or angry or feel upset or feel like they're being attacked because to some extent your ego is under attack. Your ego's like, here is who you are. Look, you're great. Those people out there are the problem. They're the ones that are evil. They're the ones doing the bad things. You're not like that. You're this person. You care about all this stuff. Look at all the stuff you do. Look at the marches you go to. Look at how generous you are. This is not you. So that's your ego's conception of yourself. And so anytime you get this kind of feedback, your ego, which most of us are almost completely related to as ourself. We don't have much of a distinction between our ego and who we truly are, the big I am at the base. And so when our ego feels under attack, without any ability to distinguish it, we feel under attack. And so that's the second thing, is once we've gone through that first part and now we're actually sitting with that feedback instead of trying to evaporate it, now we feel under attack. And when we feel under attack, we get defensive. When we get annoyed, hey, Alexandra, early to see you on today. We get annoyed with what's happening when people are attacking us. We feel like they're doing things wrong. We feel like that they should have prefaced this differently. So again, we kind of get back into another one of those loops where it's like, oh, the problem is you, and we stop being able to see that this conversation is in service of us. And it becomes, in our mind and in our ego, a conversation that is against us. This isn't for me. This is just brutal. This is just nasty. Now, I want to take a pause here and just interject that masterful leadership rides the line between being willing to stand and put this kind of stuff in front of you, but then also love you as you be in all of what gets driven up. So that doesn't mean, like, if a leader just says, stop being defensive, that's not helping someone, right? This requires a really deft touch because someone is being intentionally triggered. What I mean by that is not that I'm intentionally coming and poking them until they get upset. We're intentionally giving them feedback that they typically are going to have a hard time being with, and that's going to trigger them. So we're in an intentional process, part of which includes them being triggered. Yes, Andreas just put it beautifully. So like getting the feedback, but in a space where the person providing it doesn't really have, oh, my thing just jumped there. Oh, did you just delete? You just deleted it, Andrea. Well, anyhow, I liked what you wrote. Getting feedback, but in a situation where the leader is not able to hold the container and bring both the love and the rigor to support you in looking at this and really sitting with it and being loved through it so you can feel fine, good. Okay, so now we've laid out what typically happens. There's a few more steps. Let's just get to the end of this, and then I'm going to couch that into holding onto the turd, reserving the right to hold the turd, to turd hold. So get feedback, feel confronted, get defensive. And then what typically happens when we feel defensive is we're like, we don't want to move. We don't want to open. We want to be right that that person over there did something wrong. You did this wrong. Why did you give me that feedback in the moment? You should have waited until after this conversation. You should have done things differently. So we make the person providing us this feedback wrong. And I want to be clear, this is not to say that the leader does not have a responsibility. In fact, the leader has a great amount of responsibility and must do a great deal of work to first get themselves clean, to allow this same kind of work to impact them in their own lives so that they can go through that same fire. But then at some point, the leader also has to stand in the truth that anytime you confront someone with what they are not currently able to see, they're going to sort of, how can I get the words for this? What that person is going to do is try to tell you that you should have given them the feedback in such a way that they don't have to experience what they're experiencing. So it's kind of like an inherent part of this process is that you receive feedback, get triggered, get defensive. And from our defensiveness, we will go back to the person and be like, I'd like to give you some feedback on how you ran this exercise. The feedback is you should have done it this way, this way, this way, and this way. And the thinking there is that if you had done it this way, this way, this way, and this way, I would not now feel the way that I feel. Here's the challenge. You have to feel the way that you feel. It's not that the leader doesn't have responsibility, but at some point, the leader has to be willing to let you be in that stew, to let you have that defensiveness, to let you try to control the process, and to trust that things are set up the way they are. Side note, this is why it's so important for leaders to do their own work, because you can probably see at this point how easily it would be without a leader getting coached by their own coach, without a leader doing their own work in their own leadership structures. It becomes so easy for them to just become right about what they're right about. And then they stop listening entirely to the person. And then they stand over here and like, no, this is all part of the process. And that's where you start getting stuff like Nexium, where people somehow get it into their head that having a human being branding themselves, literally branding themselves with a branding iron, is in service of their leadership. That's fucked. That's what happens when the leaders stop getting their own work, stop buying into their own work. Okay, So now we've got the process laid out, right? And at the end of this process, what typically happens after an amount of time is people are willing to let go. It's sort of like they're holding on to what they're right about. No, fuck you, you're wrong, you did this wrong. And over time, they're willing to let go and set down the thing. And that's where the transformation can happen. That's where things can start to go differently. So they unclench and then can choose a new path for themselves. And it's in being able to choose a new path that transformation can unfold. So in the first year of the Forge, we are really, what we're doing is training people's ability to see this stuff, to speak this stuff, to provide this feedback, to be with the impact, to be with their own impact. It's a lot of that. And the gradient's low, meaning I did promise that, didn't Evan? I'm overdue on brand. COVID got in the way of everything. Where's the cattle branding? So at the low level, what happens is people get defensive, and we have no requirement of them that they do anything other than be exactly there. If someone got this feedback during month 2, and then they chose to stay clenched around it for the next 7 months, that's their choice. It's not the most empowered choice. And we're certainly going to bring a conversation to them in service of it. We're going to be like, hey, we noticed you're still pretty clenched. Do you want some support? Let go of that. Do you want a conversation so we can stand for and serve you to move beyond this? And if they're like, well, I've thought about it and I'm really actually fine where I'm at, so thank you, but no thank you. And we're like, they're still clenching the fucking pen. Great. That's their prerogative. That's what they get to choose. So that's what I mean by a low gradient. There's no requirement on your shoulders that you choose anything different. Our job over here is to put this in front of you. Your job is to show up exactly the way you do. And then we keep bringing the conversation to you, but there's no requirement that you do anything with that. So that gives us our lowest level. And that is what holding the turd is. So that thing that people do for 9 months are like, no, I'm fine. Maybe you guys have had this experience where something happens, you're clear something's happened, you go to the person, they're like, hey, do you want any support? It seems like things are weird. And they're like, no, things are totally fine, and I always clench my teeth this way, right? You're like, things are not fine. That person's reserving the right to hold on to the turd. The turd is like, it's not really the experience of life they want, but they just can't seem to let go of it. We all do this. It's very human. This is part of the root of suffering, is that we get wrapped around the thing and we can't let it go. We can't open our hand and release it back into the wild so that we can fall into a new level of beingness. So I'm going to come back to your comments. You guys have written some really awesome stuff here. And I'm going to come back to this, what you've asked, David, because I know that's part of your question. How about in intimate relationships? So, but now we're going to talk about gradients, and then we'll shift into how this shows up in intimate relationships. So as a leader, remember that the most important thing is who you're being. I've been reading Twitter lately and following leadership conversations there. I'm not often very inspired by a lot of them. Someone wrote recently, your leadership is not determined by what you say, it's determined by your actions. I say your leadership is determined by your being, and your being informs your actions. I loving the turdy enthusiasm, Rocky. So your being informs your actions. It's not that who you're being as leader means you just sit in a cave and meditate and somehow the world changes. You still have to take action, but it's the foundation of your being underneath that determines the effectiveness of the action as well as how it's received. I can say, have a nice day, or I can say, have a nice day, and my being underneath that determines how you're going to receive it, the impact of it, how it's going to feel, how it's going to land, the impact in the world, blah, blah, blah. So as a leader, if I am holding the turd, imagine I am leading something and I get feedback from the person leading me. So what happens in the Forge is at the second level of practice, the second year, when people are going through it, we're developing their ability to lead and to receive feedback on their leadership and then to continue leading, to not lose access to their leadership once they get that feedback. what happens typically is we get feedback, we get very tense, we get very tight, our breath gets stopped right about here, and then we get very performative. All of our being loses, it leaves the room. And instead, what you're left with is this weird robot, like, now I am connecting with you. It doesn't work. So we're developing that ability. And what that means is that I might be leading an exercise, and then the person developing, Bay, will say, Bay's like, Adam, I have some feedback for you. And she's going to give me that feedback. And again, the best feedback brings our blind spots into our purview. If the feedback is telling me something I already know about myself, who cares? Why is that feedback being given? And or why aren't I already putting that into practice? So the best, most powerful feedback will bring your blind spot, a blind spot, because you have many, into your awareness. And it'll have you have to, there it is. I don't like it. And it's going to create that same experience we talked about earlier. As a leader, it doesn't work for you to then continue holding the turd. You're going to have a desire to do so because you're a human. And when we get defensive, we clench around the thing, no matter how much it hurts us to keep clenching. And so what happens is that at the level of leadership, this first level, people get reflection on their leadership, and then they clench, they get defensive. And then what that does is, left unaddressed, the group being led sees this way of being modeled. What they see is, oh, that person gave feedback to this person, they got upset, and now their leadership, now it's all hard for this person to lead. Wow, that leader's a real jerk. So what gets created is, oh, the person at the top did things wrong, rather than, oh, the person leading is having their work developed and growing into something new. And so when this isn't really worked out, when the leader gets to reserve the right to hold the turd, it cascades down, and it sabotages all further leadership, because then the people below see that and they're like, yeah, and the last time this person gave me feedback, that's how I felt too, and I was right to hold on to that, and it's not wrong, and blah, 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 blah. So this is the point where we have to be, as leaders, because we've chosen it. I want to be clear, it's totally fine to reserve the right to hold turds in your life. And in fact, even if you think, I would just like to never hold turds, it's not very human of you to do that. I'm a turd holder, you're a turd holder, we're a whole bunch of turd holders here. We're all holding turds. And that's okay. That's part of your growth. We have to hold the turd before we can let it go. I'm just enjoying saying the word turd at this point. So we have to have a lot of empathy for this part of ourselves. And it's important to not fall into the trap of like, great, I'm just going to release everything all the time, because now that's the new thing that you're clenching. You're clenching onto the idea that you'll release everything all the time. Ha, got a turd in your hand. You can't escape it. You're going to hold turds. So the practice, as we raise up ingredients of leadership, as we deepen our leadership, as we hold and own more, as we are causing more in the world through the being of leader, we have more and more of a responsibility to let go of reserving the right to hold on to that turd. So what that means is that at that second level, and often the third level of the forge, when we offer this reflection, the leader gets, they get bent out of shape, and they're like, you did this wrong, and I think I really blah, 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 blah. And what we're developing in them there is the willingness to let go of this sooner. So to distinguish, yeah, I'm defensive, and I don't want to let go of it. And then to be in the practice of letting go all the same, releasing it so they can open back up. So it's not to say that you don't get to hold on to turds, because you're going to do that anyhow. It's that wherever you're committed to leading, the opportunity is to look and see, where am I clenched, and how could I distinguish that I'm clenched, notice I'm defensive, and then do whatever work I'm probably resistant to so that I can unfold and open sooner. And what that does is it allows, first of all, it tends to create a better life, a better experience of life. Because you'll find, as you do more and more of this work, that when we're in the clench, we really don't want to let go. And we're really right that we shouldn't have to fucking let go, and it's Adam's fault. But then as we practice unfolding and trusting the person developing our leadership, as we do this more and more, we start to discover that life becomes much simpler. We get triggered, And we just, instead of having to insist we're not triggered, make that person wrong, not make eye contact, all of that stuff, we can just be like, oh man, I made something happen. I made something that happened really significant. And now I'm defensive and I'm making that person wrong. Well, I'm going to work myself out over here. And that creates freedom. I'm going to give an example of how this happened for me, like a place where in my life I was having my leadership developed and what this looked like. And then I'm going to come to David's follow-up about intimate relationships. I'm going to read what you guys have written, read them out. So the example is that I was training coaches and developing leadership down in San Diego in a little hotel. Well, not a little, it was a big hotel, but we were, so the circumstances of my life at this time, this was about maybe 8 years ago, I would travel to Seattle for one weekend, train coaches for that whole weekend. This is an intense weekend, like a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, putting that stuff in front of people, doing that. So being with people's confrontation, having them make me wrong for it, having people do the same thing to me making them wrong for it. Intense weekends. So I'd travel Seattle, do that for a weekend, come back to Victoria, and then the next weekend I'd fly down to San Diego and do all of that work, all while trying to build a coaching practice, all this stuff. So busy and a lot to be with, just to give you the background. And because that whole structure, we really worked with we led from the place that in order to develop leadership, you have to have yours developed. And that means being confronted with what you don't want to look at. So I was getting a lot of that feedback. And there was one weekend where we were starting the day off and one of the people developing my leadership gave me feedback. I'm like, fuck you, guy. I was very annoyed. And then we sort of had the first 2 hours and we got on break and we were checking in and he was like, Adam, you seem kind of incomplete about this morning. And I was like, no, I think I'm fine. He's like, yeah, for me, I notice I find that you're really good at paving over your incompletions so that it looks really nice on the surface, but it's like there's a bunch of garbage down there that keeps getting driven over and it's polluting the groundwater and stuff. Instead of you getting out the jackhammer and making a mess, but then like really getting this stuff out. And I was like, wow, that really resonates for me. I don't want it to because fuck this guy, but like I can really see how that's my tendency, right? I was very good at it, very lawyerly, right? I'm mad at this person, but that's okay. I'll just be a talking head and be very polite up here while my heart boils, unbeknownst to me. I'm unaware of it because I've cut it off. And so I left that. I was like, okay, well, I guess I should do some work. And he's like, yeah, that'd be good. And I was like, well, but I'm not going to be in the room. And he's like, yeah, it'll be a bummer. We won't have you there. We could use your support, but like, this is in the way, like this is in your being. And so having you in the room would be better, but until this is addressed, having you in the room is actually less valuable. What's more valuable is you do this work so you can come back and show up from your being, which was even more annoying to hear. Fuck you. So anyhow, I went and I sat out for the next 2 hours and I was writing what's called a completion exercise. And this particular exercise I was doing was like writing out all my emotions, then writing out what I could be responsible for as far as things had gone. And then finally, what can I acknowledge myself and other people involved for? That's really the act of love at the end. Not, I can acknowledge they were tired. That's a concession. Acknowledge, like, I can acknowledge that they were brilliant and they saw something I didn't want to see. I can acknowledge my own tenderness and my own loving heart, that sort of acknowledgement. And so I was sitting in the lobby of this hotel, writing on a piece of paper, scratching my pen through the really angry writing. And the thing that was interesting as I was doing this exercise was I noticed I didn't want to do this exercise because I didn't want to come back into that room at lunch and tell them that I'd created this breakthrough and then have them all be happy for me, because then they would get to be right about this. So you can hopefully see in that, first of all, like they're for me in that conversation. They're holding that space, they're reflecting this, and they're inviting me to take this work on in service of me and a deeper level of depth. And it was so hard for me to get past my fuck you fuckers to empower that. And my turd holding, my clench was around, I don't want to let go of this because then you're going to be right, even if it's for me. And then I'm going to have to like feel good about the fact that you supported me, and I'm going to have to give you that power and blah, 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 blah. And so that's the nature of this stuff. At lower levels of leadership, if all you're doing is starting to see, oh shit, I'm holding a turd, I'm going to keep holding this turd for another 8 hours. That's a step. That's deepening your leadership. At the next level of leadership, we hold you to a higher gradient, and we check everyone that says yes to our leader track to make sure they're a yes to this, because that's the point where they're letting go of the right to be right. They're letting go of the right to hold that turd because it doesn't work. It poisons the water of the space that we're trying to create. It's not that they're wrong for doing it. It's just that we're standing for more leadership from them. We're standing for a deeper season for them to step into, past the old one. So that's holding the turd, reserving the right. I'll come to the intimacy conversation next, but first I just want to read some of what you said. So Rocky, as usual, with his trademark turd-based enthusiasm. Heather is saying, and Heather's been through the second track of the leadership track in the Forge this year, so she knows a lot of what I'm talking about. And she says, as the leader, holding the love is deeply challenging when the client becomes defensive. And I imagine the other way too. Hey, Heather, when you're feeling defensive, it's hard to find our way back to love. We're more present to the what's wrong. Heather also says, this is an area I have much more work to do. I find it challenging to hold people in reverence when they turn on me as a leader. Easy to talk about, hard to stand in. Yeah, so Heather's describing that really almost inherently human thing that happens when we put something in front of people as a leader, and then they come back at us and are like, you're wrong, here's why you're wrong, you should have done this differently, blah, 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 blah. It's a little bit like if you woke up in the middle of stomach surgery and then wanted to offer your doctor in the middle of performing surgery feedback. No, wait until he's done. This is not the time to provide feedback. That's what we kind of do. Alexandra saying holding the turd is probably a way we should name or label most of our tools in the coaching personal development world. Probably more people to be drawn to them. And Andrew saying, so would the idea here be that you reflect the turd to the client, they don't accept it or push back on it, and we still stand for the reflection we see? Yes, Andrew. That's where it starts to be a little different for, well, that's part of where coaching and leadership, as the gradient grows, we're standing more powerfully for people. So in a coaching conversation, if I reflect something to the client and they're like, I don't think that's the case, I might like get curious about that with them, but I'm not going to really do much more with it. Whereas in a leadership conversation, I bring more of an agenda. My agenda is what is being caused in the space. And so if I'm like, hey, I noticed that who you're being is kind of defensive, and that's in the way of the group getting what they're here for, and the person says, I don't really see that, I'm gonna stand more powerfully for them. I'm gonna actually be a little more directive. Great. So I get that you don't see it, and I'm gonna ask you to take on seeing it. What do you need to do to see that? Maybe take a breath, have a look. We're gonna hand this over to so-and-so so they can lead for a bit. I want you to tell me what you notice. Rocky, there's no way you could be a turd whisperer with your enthusiasm. It simply would not work. A turd shouter. I shout the turds out of your hands. Okay, so we've laid all that out, and now David's question is like, okay, but what about in an intimate relationship? Like when I'm with an intimate partner, there's not so much of a leadership conversation. So when do I get to be right about holding on to the turd about my partner? Like the turd we're holding on to might be like, my partner's being a jerk, and that's the end of the story. I don't want to look on my side. And then the other side of that would be like, how do I work myself out? How do I free myself? How do I let go of this so that I can get back into right relationship? And the answer to the question, I don't know if it's actually, it might just be an implied question, which is like, how do I know which of those to choose? What's the right answer? There isn't one. The answer is, it all comes down to your willingness. So I would assert in relationship, what we could all aspire to is that we would always look on our side. However, the partner that we've chosen is showing up, we look on our side and see what work there is for us to do first and foremost. Sometimes we're not willing. Sometimes it's just like, no, fuck this person. And we have to honor that in ourselves. If we're unwilling, we're unwilling. And in a leadership conversation, I'm part of what I'm supporting leaders to do is become willing sooner, to move beyond their own unwillingness. But in an intimate relationship, you don't really have someone standing over top of you hanging out. You've got you and your partner, and you're doing your best. And so I really think in intimate relationships, we just have to look like, hey, am I willing? Am I willing to take this on over here? Am I willing to take a look? And then the third thing, I think this is third, maybe we're on second, but I'd say like the last or third or final or whatever signpost I'm going to give you, the final thing is I think this is why we benefit so much from some kind of third party support. Like we create this relationship we call a marriage, which is when we create it, we hope a forever thing. We get married. No one gets married planning to get divorced. Well, maybe some people do, but they're not part of this conversation. That's a different conversation. We get married with the intention that this is a forever thing. And then we put no investment into it. Like, that's not totally fair. We buy treats, go on trips, blah, blah, blah. But like, we don't invest in it the way we would invest in our jobs. We don't invest in like, we go see coaches. We work on stuff with people so as to get like benefit, but we put very little proactive investment in getting someone to support us and making this most important forever relationship in our life thriving. And so I think when people proactively work with coaches, work with counselors, therapists, just to get someone outside who's able to be a third party that's not in the swirl with you. When we invest in that, it makes such a difference because then you're not trying to figure all of this out and you're not trying to separate you from the version, you're not trying to elevate up out of the relationship and be like, oh, I can see that's my ego getting caught there. That's her ego getting caught there. I can see all this. It's just really hard to do, if not impossible. So that's a real plug there for counseling, therapy, and coaching in relationship. Make those kind of investments. It's really worth it. People often ask, sometimes I have friends come who have kind of like, not too often, but sometimes they're like, hey, you seem to have really like 10x'd your life. It seems like your life's quite exponential. Like you've really moved from where you were when we first met. I was talking to someone connected with me like 10 years ago, and then we were reconnecting. It's like, how do you do that? Like, I want that for my life. And the answer is never very appealing for people, which is like, for the last 10 years, I've made my first priority for where I invest my money, me, not a Roth IRA, not a mutual fund. First and foremost, as a non-negotiable, I invest in coaches and counselors and stuff like that. And then everything else is layered on top of that. So just like people are like, you should put aside money for your retirement first, pay yourself first, then do the fun stuff, then everything else. I add coaching into that. So there's a non-negotiable in my life, not because I should do it, but because that's how we create an exponential life, is we invest in the things that lead to that. So counseling, coaching, they don't have to be expensive. There's lots of huge range of prices, and even having anyone, if you just pay for someone outside of you who's not even the best counselor, but every week or every 2 weeks or every month you go and talk to this person and you come back, that's going to develop your relationship in ways that won't happen when you try to do it all internally inside of the system of the two people. Okay, I hope I've answered your question almost fulsomely, David. I think fulsome, if I remember correctly, means overly full. I over-answered. It was replete. Okay, cool. Well, that was we spent 45 minutes talking about turds. Everything else is going to be a letdown from here. I want to see what Daniel asked, which were thoughts on overthinking versus over-planning. And Jess also asked, I'm going to try to loop this in with Jess's question. So Jess asked, where am I currently mapping out, like what's my current spontaneous mapping, my mapping for being hilarious and spontaneous in the moment. So if any of you listening or watching didn't see, I shared recently on my Facebook profile a video I'd recorded 5 years ago. It's a joke, it's satire. And it's me providing a surefire, proven system to be spontaneous and hilarious in any moment. The system is you, at the start of your day, grab your notebook and you write out mind maps for every possible response someone could give you, and then every possible answer you could have to that response. So it's taking spontaneity and shoving it into extreme planning under the belief that then I can be totally spontaneous and now I can relax because it's all planned and I don't have to like I don't have to worry that I'm not going to be spontaneous because I already know that I'll be spontaneous because I already know the answers that I've got. Oh, what a relief. So I think Jess's question is like, where do I actually do something like that? The other question might be like, what's the playful version of that you're currently working on? So I'm going to try to answer both those, and then I'm going to layer this in with overthinking and overplanning. Before I come to the questions Jess is asking, I just want to talk about this notion, this ridiculous notion of spontaneity mapping, which is hopefully evident to everyone. It's a dumb idea. Don't do it. If you map everything out in the hopes that then you can be spontaneous, that's the antithesis of spontaneity. That being said, if you watch this video and you notice how deadpan I am in it, this is my experience largely listening to the people I work with, and especially people that are high performing executives. This is largely my experience of them describing things like their mindfulness practices, their desire to have more presence in their life, and how they want to go about creating a life filled with joy. With all of the earnestness that I'm embodying in that video. Like they're very like, I've got this system, I meditate for 5 minutes, then I do a visioning for 5 minutes, I do this, I do that. They believe they are empowered by their system, and it's completely missing the point. And their earnestness, their certainty about it actually just further increases that. Here's one more example of it. I was interviewing people for my first book, brilliant people, and I was talking to someone who I was just asking them about their brilliance and how does relationship go for them. And you've probably heard me talk about this person before. He'd created a spreadsheet for all his relationships, and the spreadsheet had like their name, when we met, what are their levers, like what kind of things do I notice they enjoy talking about, what kind of things do they not really like talking about that I could then, if I needed to change the conversation or do something, I could start to bring that forward. What have I done that they liked about me? Is there anything I've done that they haven't liked? So like big spreadsheet, holy brainy, right? Like brainy AF. And this person really believed like, yeah, it really, their experience was it really benefited their relationships. They really felt like, this allowed them to have a more empowered relationship. That's the opposite of relationship. Relationship is you and I sitting together in the moment and growing together, letting me say something and being with your reaction, and then letting you respond to me and me being with my reaction, and then co-creating the moment with each other as it goes. This is not an indictment of that dude, because there was a point when that would have been my life too. In fact, I'm almost certain I had something like that, some version of it, like tracking people, last time I gave them a gift, stuff like that. And so, Evan, your sarcasm is spot on, right? Like connection doesn't exist in the cells of a spreadsheet. And what that is artifice. It's artifice attempting to create connection, and it's asymptotic. You can never reach connection from doing that. You'll get what feels like you're getting closer and closer, but it won't work. It's like liking something and hoping that if you like it enough, it will become love. That's not how love works. You don't like up to a certain threshold and then tip over into love. You love it or you like it. They're distinct. And so these systems are really like they're the game of the ego, and it's performing the thing that we're hoping to experience in our life. So first of all, it just doesn't work. Second of all, can we find love in our hearts for these people who, like, it's important, at least for me, to recognize these are people trying so hard to create something they want so much. And it's a beautiful example of how pushing so hard for it is actually the thing in the way. So Daniel, to your point, this is what I believe is really the cost of overthinking and overplanning, is it gives us the illusion that we're moving closer and closer and closer to what we want, while actually moving us further and further and further away from it. And it does that because as we remember, it's asymptotic, meaning you can get ever closer but never actually there. And further, these sort of strategies develop diminishing returns, which means over time you have to put in more effort to get an increasingly minimal growth. And so that guy's spreadsheet is going to get more and more complicated, and he's going to have to add more and more and more columns to try to get more and more of that tiny new bit of experience of like, my relationship's growing with this person. And in fact, that just raises the stakes of him being invested in this concept as the thing, the savior for what he desires, and has him more and more stuck in it. So often the hard thing for us to do is to like drop it, to drop all of it, to trust that as all of that falls away, we're going to be able to find ourselves, and we're going to be able to find that other person and grow from there. And that requires confronting a lot of fear. The reason this person created this system in the first place is because there's something they fear. Maybe that if they just be themselves, they won't be able to create the relationship that they're craving. Or maybe if they just show up with people, they're going to end up offending them, and then they're going to be left all alone. Some kind of fear has driven this, because that's not innate. That kind of structure is not, if you watch children create friends, that's not what they do. No child sits in the mall, observes all the kids, writes notes, and then approaches one of them. I remember as a kid, you'd go up to another kid in the mall, your mom's over there, his mom's over there, and you'd be like, hey, do you want to be friends? That was easy. Great, we're friends. Okay, well, it's time to go. Okay, good. I guess we're still friends, or I don't know, whatever. That can be a little reductionist because there's more complexity as we become adults and we have more of a set frame of reference. We're not as fluid as children, and that's what it is. It's not bad or better or wrong or anything. But the point here is that what is innate and true to ourselves is just connection's always available. And when we layer stuff like that on top of it, it gets in the way. So Daniel, that's my thinking about overthinking, is that it typically is a function of something we're afraid of. I won't get something will happen, and I'm trying to avoid that. And it simultaneously gets us more involved and wrapped up in it, while also keeping us further and further away from the thing we want. As a side note, my experience is that this is what most anxiety is about for people too, which is people with a lot of anxiety are afraid of an event happening in the future. And so the anxiety is often thinking in an attempt to prevent a future event from happening. How do I think about this enough to get to a solution so that this doesn't happen? And what that does is it eliminates your ability to just be with life as it shows up, but it also it has the same feedback loop, because what happens is as you think about the future, you become disconnected from the present, which provides you a temporary reprieve from the present. You get numb from being stuck up here in the cycle. So it kind of works a little bit in the short term, but then of course you need more and more and more of that to numb yourself the same extent. And we can kind of like, if you think about the future enough, we can like, oh great, I've got a solution. But then of course, because the future hasn't yet happened, there's no real solution to it, because you can always think of like a new thing that, oh fuck, I have this solution, but what if that? So then you have to get back up in your head and think of a new solution to that. And then eventually that's just the world you live in. All you can do is think about the future. What's going to go wrong? What's the solution? Okay, but what'll go wrong from that? What's the solution to that? And then there's no capacity to be in the present. So it's that same kind of vicious cycle that we're talking about here with all kinds of overthinking, overplanning. Evan, you feel like a system like that could be a way of avoiding having to feel whatever's true in the moment? Yep, 100%. And usually there's a specific flavor of not wanting to feel something in the moment that people are like, if you wanted to distinguish the fear even further, it's like, oh, they're afraid to feel lonely or whatever it is. But on the whole, you're exactly right. It's something to prevent something from happening, to not have to feel something in the moment. Often, hey, Maria, often we create systems, I created systems like that to avoid disappointment and letdown. So now let's go to Jess's question. What's my version of doing this these days? What is my version of, where am I planning? Oh, there's two places I can kind of think of. The first is so I'm a part of a group named Metal, which is a remarkable group. It's I guess we call it a brotherhood. So it's created as like a group, a men's group for people that are leaders in music, entertainment, technology, arts, leadership. And quite large. It became international when COVID struck. For the longest time, it was just an LA-based group. You go in, there's great talks. A man named Ken Rutkowski runs it and created it, and he brings just amazing people. I'm trying to think of some names like Dave Asprey. He brought in Vishen Lakiani from Mind Valley. Uh, the guy that did Quest Bars, whoever that guy's name is. And like the so great speakers, and then the men in the group are phenomenal too. Like I'll always forget his name. I think it's Scott Page from Pink Floyd, Freddie Ravel from Earth, Wind and Fire. Like just musicians of the highest caliber. The founder of Atari is a member of the group. Hung out with him. So just like a high caliber of men. And I'm very clear that I have something to offer. Um, and what I have to offer is not like Tom Bilyeu. That's it. Thanks, Evan. Appreciate that. Great guy. I really enjoyed. He was really, really delightful. Um, what I have to offer is my being and the transformation that gets created in my being. And so, one of the things you can do in this group is you can create like a weekly call if you want. Hey, men, we're going to do this every week. Come join me, blah, 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 blah. So, what's happening? I've been a part of this group for a year ish. Is there's a part of me that's called to serve in some way, to offer something. So the easiest thing to do would be like, man, I'm starting a group. Here's the working title. Put it up there, and we'll see how it goes. But it's quite scary for me because now I'm playing in a bigger arena. I can do that on Facebook, not because there's something wrong with you, but just because in my mind I've created Facebook safe, Metal kind of more dangerous, edgier, bigger people up to bigger stuff in their life. And so all of my old, excuse me, all of my old fears show up once again. Who are you to do something like this? If you invite people to your party, they're not going to want to come. They're not going to be impressed with you. All of that stuff's there. And from that, I'm getting into over planning. What's the right title? What's the right thinking? What's the right structure? How does this need to be created? What do I need to make happen? And then nothing happens. Just don't create anything. So, excuse me, a little phlegmy tea. So that's an example where I'm getting a little over planning, and I'll just share like my process is one, I've been distinguishing that. Oh, that's happening. And I'm distinguishing it a little bit more every time I talk about it. So in this moment, I'm kind of like, oh, there's some over planning going on there. Two, the other thing that I'm conscious of is from, oh, I'm over planning and overthinking. The pendulum swing to the other side of the context of not good enough is like, well, fuck it, let's do it, bonsai. And then things aren't quite as thoughtful and intentional as I'd like. And so really what I'm doing with all of this is slowing down and reminding myself, oh, first of all you really need to do, Adam, is connect. So just keep creating relationship in this group. Stuff will happen as it happens. You don't have to force something into the space. Trust that who you are and who you be in and of itself is a gift and serves, and that the work you've done, Adam, comes forward and is felt, regardless of whether or not you run something. And third, let go of the planning and wait until whatever is being called to be created by you for this particular group comes forward. So release my attachment to like, there's a part of me that's like, fuck, I need to do it now. Because if I don't, the moment will be gone. And then I'll be left behind. And then it'll never happen. And then it'll be like, oh, life of regret. That's my fear that does that. And so instead, the game is a lot more just like, oh, just be with this as it's going. Be in relationship. Let this happen as it does. So that's kind of where that's currently showing up for me, Jess. Okay, that seems like a good place to transition to forcing the breakthrough versus allowing it. Who asked about this? Oh, no, you know what? I'm going to go to Rob's question first because I think this was a really good one. So Rob asked, Adam, can you talk about serving free of expectation versus like how does that interact with a career and making income, such as like a coach, but really everywhere, anywhere where you're practicing serving people. The heart of service is releasing expectation. How does that work when we got to make money? So we'll talk about service here, and then we'll talk about how this interacts. I'm going to recommend some books. For those of you that are curious kind of about this concept, Getting Naked by Patrick Lencioni is a great book. Patrick's a great writer. His books are enjoyable. They're not the best books in the world. Some of the stuff sometimes is a little, some of his systems sometimes I think are a little like, oh, that's the performative version of what's deeper. But that doesn't really matter. What's awesome about his books are one, they're written as parables, narratives. So he talks about leadership and business organizational kind of stuff, but through the lens of a story, which I always find way more enjoyable to read in long form. Short form, I often want like a short essay, like the posts I write, or I mean, I write those posts because that's what I want to read. So a short form that kind of breaks something down clearly, cleanly, concisely for me, and I'm like, got it. Longer form, I like to read. I noticed you didn't capitalize that, Heather. So I like that you're practicing some vulnerability right here in the chat. So narrative form, it's a story about a guy, and the premise of Getting Naked, the story is that this guy works for a big consulting firm, and they've always been beaten out by this local consulting firm, and they're annoyed because they've got this huge structure behind them, and this local consulting firm, it seems well liked, but it's like small, and I put it in the comments for you, Maria, just right above. It's Getting Naked by Patrick Lencioni. This small firm just seems to beat them out, and it's really annoying. And so when the book starts, this small firm's just, the owner's been like, hey, it's been a great ride, I'm ready to sell. And this big firm has bought them. And so the guy, the protagonist, is like, finally, I can figure out how the hell this small firm has been beating us. What is it that they're doing? And the book details this process by which a small firm does not show up and try to impress the clients. They don't try to tease them with value, offer a taster session. They don't do that. They show up and genuinely try to understand the client's problem and provide value up front. So ultimately, the entire book is about service as an entire model of business, rather than all of the other stuff, leads, funnels, all of that stuff that we don't love. It's okay for people to do it. It's just, there's a bigger game. And if you're here, hopefully you want to play a bigger game in your life, not bigger in terms of the amount of money you make, although that follows typically, but bigger in terms of your experience of your heart open, your experience of the impact you're having in the world. So now we're going to build on where we started. To serve people, we kind of have to let go of an expectation that something will come back to us. If I put you in touch with someone with the expectation that then you're going to do the same, it diminishes the amount of service you can really receive because it comes with a burden, right? There's an energetic weight to what I've just provided you that leaves you sort of like, okay, great, I got that, but now I have to do this. So that removes our freedom. And even if you want to do that thing for me, it still diminishes the freedom with which you can receive it. Like if you've ever had someone ask you to introduce you to someone, can you make a referral to me for that person? Whenever someone wants an introduction for me, or whenever I feel called to make an introduction, early on I created the practice and the commitment. I'm gonna make a powerful introduction because that's how I want to be introduced. When people put me in touch with someone, I want a really powerful introduction. And even if that never happens, I'm gonna model that all the time. And so I sit down and I think about the person and who they are, and I include that so that both people get a sense right out of the gate of who this person be. It's quite flattering, I hope. That requires some inertia for me to step over every time I do it, because I got to like take some time. I got to open my heart. I got to put energy towards both these people. And so if every time someone introduces someone to me with the expectation I'm going to then do the same to them, what tends to happen is this thing off my to-do list, or I'm like, oh, great, thank you for that, but now I have a task, so I got to do that. So this can be expanded infinitely. The extent to which you have an expectation of something coming back to you reduces the extent to which the service you are providing is experienced. We could call that almost like an energetic law. Sidebar, I'm thinking of creating a new infographic of like a bunch of energetic laws I've noticed. So one is like, the law of attraction, not so much the woo-woo version of it, but like that's an example of an energetic law. We see and experience more of the lens we look through in the world. That's ultimately how I'd summarize the law of attraction. Thus, what you look for is what you will get more of. Another one is possibility and fear always show up in equal and opposite countermeasure to one another. Energetic law. And the third one would be the one I just mentioned, that the extent to which we have an expectation of getting something back is indirectly correlated with the extent to which someone can fully experience the service we are providing them. Meaning the more expectation I have, and it doesn't have to be spoken, it can just be an energetic expectation, the less they will be able to experience being truly served by me. So if we're committed to creating a thriving practice, doing whatever we're doing from the principles of service, we kind of have to let go of an expectation of getting something back. That becomes challenging when you're starting out as a coach or starting out as a consultant or starting out as a realtor, and you're trying to serve people, but you're also looking over here and you're like, fuck, there's no food on my table tonight. My savings are diminishing. And so Rob's question is, how do we navigate that? What do we do with that? So first, it's good to know there's always going to be some tension. Like maybe the Buddha could remove themselves free of any expectation. And on a good day, maybe a lot of us can kind of do that. But we're all going to have days where fear about money, fear about love, fear about not enough, scarcity-based fears are going to show up in our being. And despite our best attempts to not have them show up, they're there. We might try to meditate them away. And what do you know? The day that was chosen for me today is a day where part of the experience in it is one of scarcity. Love the wording that just came out of me on that. The day that was chosen for me today is one that includes the experience of scarcity. Something profoundly spiritual for me in that. I'm going to make a note. The day, I'm just doing some work over here, guys. The day that was chosen for me today is a day that includes the experience of scarcity, right? So then your conversation gets to be like, so who do I want to be? Given that that's the day that has been opened in front of me. So one, there's always a tension. We're doing our best to reduce that experience of scarcity so we can serve free of expectation. And we've got room for our own humanity. Hey, sometimes we're just not going to be able to do that. And that's okay too. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with us or whatever. And so what we can do though, is we can proactively do the stuff that will minimize that tension. Proactively do the stuff that will minimize the amount that scarcity comes into our personal internal conversation at any given point. And so this is why in the Creating Clients course, day 0, the very first video, one of the first things that we say is create a source of income. Your source of income can be a line of credit. Your source of income can be a bank loan. Your source of income can be the equity in your home. Your source of income can be a job that you're staying at. Your source of income can be babysitting. It doesn't matter, but create some kind of source of income so that you don't have to worry about where food is going to be placed on your table from, so that is handled. This is one of the things that people knew in coaching especially, but I imagine most entrepreneurial ventures are unwilling to, they're really resistant to, and then consequently it totally derails them. The reason they're resistant to it is because they create a story that, but if I put my attention, if I have a job or something like that, it's going to take my attention away from the thing I'm really committed to. And what they can't see is, consider that in a service-based profession, being able to serve free of attachment and expectation is your highest requirement. It's your highest commitment. Or put differently, it's the foundation upon which everything else is going to be built. And so you being able to ensure, you doing whatever is required to ensure that that can happen, is actually you being the most committed, especially when you have resistance to it. And usually they have resistance because they got into this work because they were a bit of a fuck you to the job that they left. And now they're being told, oh, I got to go back to it, but I said fuck you to that job. I'm so free. Not really. You're free from it as opposed to free with it. And that's where real freedom exists. Real freedom is when I can be wherever and feel free and have the experience of freedom, as opposed to I'm free as long as I'm not there. I'm free because I've escaped that thing. This is the heart of that quote you'll hear me say sometimes, the Adam Quiney quote, which is, until you can have an experience of freedom at the office, you have no hope of having that experience of freedom at the beach. If we want to make it longer, it's you have no hope of having a greater than short-term experience of freedom at the beach. And that's because a lot of people go to the beach to escape the office. So they don't have real freedom. They only have freedom as long as they don't have this circumstance in their life. And that's sort of the veneer of freedom. Yeah. So Andrew's, just sharing same experience here, right? I couldn't imagine trying to build a coaching business without a source of income. I would use scarcity anxiety in the client creation process. In my early days, the first 6 months that I was building my coaching practice, I was working as a lawyer, an articling student actually, which is kind of like a full-fledged lawyer, but you have another lawyer overseeing, or at least what I was doing was fairly full-fledged. I have another lawyer overseeing me so that I don't mess up my client's livelihood. I don't make any huge errors in their liability and stuff. So I was working that. I was not getting paid a great amount of money, but enough, probably maybe 30K a year, 40K maybe, somewhere thereabouts. So not a lot. And then we had, Bay had a job. And so that allowed, I could do that indefinitely initially. It was hard work. I was working 45, 50 hours a week as a lawyer, and then I'd come home and practice coaching, coach people, invite them, connect with them. And then the second 6 months, we had gotten a check, an income tax refund of about 8K, which is high because I had student loan reimbursements and stuff like that. So 8K, which went into our bank, and that provided, I'd left law at this point, and that provided about 4 months of runway. So if I made $0, I could keep doing that for 4 months. So that gave me a runway. That gave me a source of income. And if necessary, we could borrow money from the equity we had in our home. We didn't want to do that. We'd already borrowed a ton to like train as coaches and all that, but and to pay our coach. But that was available. So there was a source of income there that then allowed me to some extent, get past some of the scarcity that would have otherwise been present if I was like, I have to sign a client in the next month. That energy does not really serve you. It doesn't work to serve someone else, because then above service, what is really present, the first and foremost priority is I have to get a client. And then underneath that is, so I better serve this person. That doesn't work. What we want is, I will serve this person. And from doing so, the rest will take care of itself. This is another energetic law of the universe. The more you serve into the world, the more that will come back to you. That requires a lot of trust. So get the source of income, which makes it easier to trust. I'm going to be okay. So Rob, that's how I would say they kind of connect. Just checking to see anything else I want to say about that particular piece. Nope, that really covers it. Andrew, I really get it. Andrew just shares, I still feel that way, even with a source of income, the need to sign clients. A lot of work has been done there, but it's pretty fascinating to see. Yeah. I mean, I've been in this work for a decade now, and it still shows up way less, in like my first, second year, third year even, like at first it was just always there. Got another client, got another client. I'd sign a client and I'd have like, oh, life's amazing for like a week. And then I got to get a client, I got to get a client. Um, and then as time has gone on, these days it's like every 6 months that fear arises, especially if like I've been serving a lot, but not a lot has been coming back. You know, I get a lot of no's, et cetera, et cetera. David, maybe. I don't think I have anything else to do. I should check. I didn't check my calendar. Oh, I got oodles of time. We'll probably go till the top of the hour for this one today. We're having fun. So the first is, yeah, over time, that fear shows up less and less because I'm deepening my ability to trust myself, others, and spirit. But it still shows up because fear is fear. And that's what got me here. And so, you know, it's a kind of a perennial thing. And we've got to learn how to find the balance between doing what we need to do to ensure that we are okay and then not falling completely into the throes of fear. So like what fear that you're not going to make enough would have you do often is get super crazy and get like $6 billion in the bank. Then I can relax and maybe start that coaching practice. You know, all of that, David, all of that stuff. Whereas magical thinking, which is kind of running away from fear, would be like, fuck it, I don't need any money in the bank. I'm not going to pay any attention to my fear. And we kind of need to be almost a little bit stalwart with our fear. We need to be with it. Okay, I got a fear that there's not going to be enough money. I need to get some money coming in. And I don't have to totally let my fear dictate my actions. I just need to like get grounded. Okay, fear's not going to dictate things. I do need a source of income and I can breathe into and out of this fear. Evan, thanks for sharing that, Evan. It's such a great story. He says, I have 2 clients I just signed that I served 4 years ago doing something entirely different. That's a beautiful example of how service will come back to us and often in ways we could never imagine. Sometimes you'll serve someone. I've served people where we've had a conversation once and then I never hear from them again. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that, you know, I don't think I'm going to hear from that person ever again. And and then like 4 years later, someone will reach out and be like, hey, I talked to this person and they had a conversation with you a while back, and you know, I really want to coach and blah blah blah. And like maybe that person becomes the next client. So we never know. That's the beautiful thing about service is we don't know how it'll return to us. It's kind of karmic that way. And a lot of this stuff, it's funny hearing myself say it because when I started out, my fear wanted like grounded, clear, foundational line flowchart diagrams to tell me how this was going to give me an ROI. But the game of service is a game of kind of trust rather than proven ROI. And it's stepping out of the like, show me exactly how it'll go. And there's a passage I'm going to read from A Shift in Being here. I'm going to come to our next thing after that. Let's see here. I just read a page here, Evan, that made me think of you. Where is he talking about trusting? Okay, I'm going to look for a little while longer. I don't like too much dead air. I'll summarize it if I must do. Let's look just briefly. Okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to find it. But fundamentally, what Leon is talking about, this is going to transition into exponential versus linear growth. So it'll be a nice segue. But in Shift in Being, he talks about how, first of all, transformation is not something we arrive at linearly, meaning you can't, I will, Evan, you can't show up into a conversation and say, Coach, I would like to create a transformation today. That's a very linear approach, right? And then we'd be like, great, what's the conversation to have for that? Great, how do we get there? That's not how it works. And so that can be frustrating often for people because we're like, I want the line. Like, how do I know I'll get there? But that's not the nature of exponential processes. They happen almost spiritually, almost mythically beyond our understanding. And so it requires a degree of trust. And in fact, the heart of transformational work is that it will require access to that which we do not currently know or see. And so we must practice trust. If we could already see it, it would bring us back into that linear flow, and then there's not going to be the next stage for us. And so we have to let go of knowing in order to create what is there to be created, in order to create what must be allowed. I wish I could read the passage because it'd be a lot more potent, I think. Evan, I'm going to read you. I do have the passage that made me think of you, though, right here. This reminds me of something you'd asked for support on. I'm not going to go into that. I'll just read you the passage. The heading for this is the need to see progress. Learning to trust the mystery and the magic of the transformational process is as important for the coach as for the client. Practitioners of transformational coaching learn to stand as beacons of trust so that others may lean on us when their own trust falters. You may not have much experience with this way of being, and living from trust in a world steeped in doubt and fear can feel odd, as though you are being foolish or naive, until you learn the way, of course. Here's the part I was thinking of. One pitfall that befalls many coaches is wishing people would make more rapid or visible progress. Do you ever find yourself becoming impatient or frustrated with how things are moving? That is a telltale signal that your own level of trust is wavering. Wishing for things to move faster or for someone to make visible progress is just that. It's wishful thinking. Why would you wish for anything to be other than it is? Are you doubting the person's choices or your own ability? What are you not trusting? Do you have an unmet need that underlies this wish? Wishing for a person to progress faster or differently than they are detracts from your capacity to hold a space for them to struggle and fail, or to break through and flourish. Avoid spending energy wishing for things to be different to meet your own need for progress. That is a sign that you are not living in trust. Great passage, right? That's as much for me as for anyone else, just to be clear. Maria, what have you written here? I suggested to a potential client that they would be better for another coach. That would be to serve them better. 1 year later, I get a referral via the same prospect, and it turns out to be known company. Now they are on retainer. Moral, what goes around comes around. Yeah, that's beautiful, Maria. That's such a beautiful, one of the funny places we can really serve people in any sales process. If we're first of all, I believe every sales process can be transformational. And if we really want to serve someone in a transformational sales process, part of the opportunity is, I'll write the book title here for you, Maria. It's called A Shift in Being, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's without a doubt the best book I've ever read on coaching, and I recommend it to anyone interested in transformational work. It's potent. So one of the most powerful ways we can serve someone in a transformational sales process is to really stand for them to get empowered and clean and clear on what they really want and what they don't want. And to have our sole goal be to determine with them, in partnership with them, what is best going to serve them from here. To do that, we have to let go of our attachment to them becoming our client. But from that place, then we can be in a conversation like, okay, great. So would it serve you to get really clear on you being a no? Maybe that's what the conversation is. Because sometimes where people are at is they're like, in their heart, they're kind of a no, but they're afraid of missing out on something. So then they're staying in a conversation even though they want to be a no. Their heart's no, but their head is like, I need to do this. And so from there, we can support them and be like, great, so what would you need to let go of? You can have that conversation. Or we can find out what they really want from a coach and release our attachment to getting a client and put them in touch with the right person. And when you serve, especially when you serve above you getting something, like when you put that priority higher, people will never forget that. That will stay with people for the rest of their lives because it's so rare. And it becomes like a signal cutting through the noise of the ordinary. The noise of the ordinary is, let me serve you. But what I really mean is, let me get you to watch my webinar so you then buy my product. That's what that's code for. And so so that's like the game, is putting service above our own needs so that people get this unique experience with us and becomes magnetic. That's awesome, Evan. Did you have a breakthrough? I often, if a client's having a breakthrough, usually it's because the coach has created one for themselves. So I'm curious if there's anything like that that you experienced. Also curious if you took on completion. Okay, let's see. Generating momentum as an entrepreneur. We should talk about forcing the breakthrough versus allowing it. So, the heart of transformation is really, let's see if I can get the right words for it. Your soul already knows what wants to happen. This is going to get a little esoteric, but I think you can hang with me. Esoteric's the word I'm using now instead of woo. I think there's probably a more powerful way I could hold this. Let's practice. So this is I'm gonna presence us to spirit. That's what I'm gonna present spirit is what I'm gonna do in this conversation. That's how I'm gonna call it from here forward. So the soul, the part of you that's innate and you can call your essence, your being, your soul, your spirit, whatever, it already knows what wants to happen in the moment. And then there's this meat thing laid over top of it, and then a brain that controls the meat thing, the meat container, the meat bag. We've got turds. It's the turdy meat bag live. So, and then what happens is your brain gets all like, I can't trust. I need to make sure everything goes the right way. It does all this managing and stuff like that. But underneath that, your soul always knows what there is to have come forward. So, and spirit's infused in everything, every moment, every step by step of your life, and everything happening in the life around all of us. Spirit's there. There's guiding something. So when we're trying to create transformation, we often approach it from the same linear way we approach most of our life. Like, how do I get a raise? What do I need to do to get the raise? Great, I will go do those things. They want me to work harder. So now I'll set a Pomodoro timer and I'll work like this, and then I get an hour. Yay, I got the raise. It was very linear, right? But that's the brain forcing something into the world. That's not how transformation and breakthroughs occur. It doesn't mean that you might not have to step beyond your own resistance to something, which at the time can feel like forcing stuff. But in fact, often what there is to do when you're overcoming your resistance is letting go of your resistance. You're allowing yourself to be with whatever it is that you're actively resisting. It gets created in our brain and our experiences. I'm forcing myself to do something in the face of not wanting to do it. And then we're like, oh, what needs to happen is I just need to relax for another day and maybe drink another beer, and then all of that sort of stuff. The distortion of the surrender experiment. That'd be a kind of interesting title for a book. Would be like, I don't know, some play on Michael Singer's surrender experiment that sort of parodies the way that often gets distorted by people, and all of that sort of stuff. Well, Evan, that's cool, and I'm hoping you get the gift of completion at some point. And that's awesome that things worked out the way they did. So let's see, where was I? Right, allowing. So the way that breakthroughs occur is typically that a breakthrough is almost never away from something. It's usually towards something. So I create a breakthrough in connection. I'm moving towards connection, as opposed to the way a lot of people would be like, I want a breakthrough in no longer feeling scared, or I want a breakthrough in no longer being angry. That's away from something, right? The reason it's towards as opposed to away from is away from creates your life such that this thing can no longer exist. Towards creates your life such that there is more of the thing you want without excluding anything. If I'm creating a breakthrough towards connection, at no point does that statement in and of itself preclude anger. It doesn't say, I want to create connection and I have to do so by eliminating my anger. Now, you may create that after the fact, but the simple statement of, I'm committed to creating a breakthrough in service of connection, that does not actually involve going away from anything. It's just a commitment to open and unfold into more. And so in pursuing a breakthrough like that, what people will find typically is not that there's connection is always present. It's always available moment by moment, minute by minute, but we put a bunch of stuff in the way. So the way that it typically goes, the way life's constructed is connection's available. We layer stuff on top to protect ourselves from connection. And then we try to do stuff to force connection into the space on top of this. So we built this scaffolding to protect us from what's scary about connection, and then trying to connect over top of it. That's kind of what that spreadsheet, remember I talked about the spreadsheet with the guy with the relationships? That's ultimately what I would assert is happening there, is he's cut off connection on some level, intimacy, connection, whatever it is, and now is using a spreadsheet to try to perform it, to create the artifice of connection. And that's not going to get him there. So that's an example of trying to like force a breakthrough. I'm gonna make this happen. In fact, what there would be for him to do in the practice of creating a breakthrough in connection would typically be like to allow the connection that's already there to show up, especially when he's resistant to it or insistent that he can't do that. So for a lot of people, anger and connection are at odds. They're like, well, I get really angry with people and then there can't be any connection. What's typically happening there is from their anger, they close, they make people really wrong, and then they withdraw their connection because they're closed, right? It's all kind of cascades from one into the other. And instead, the opportunity is like, how could you allow the connection that's already there whilst being angry? How could you be and stay connected with this human being while still allowing yourself to be angry? That's going to create a whole new experience for that person. Now, that in and of itself, just that statement, isn't just going to like poof, pop them into a breakthrough necessarily. It might, because they're going to have to practice with that because they've spent a lifetime clenching around their anger and withdrawing from connection. So at first they might be like, they might go and practice and be like, you know what? I'm really fucking mad at you. And that's the new thing that they're saying. And the person might be like, well, you know what? I'm fucking mad at you. Fuck you. And then they come back and they're like, oh boy, that didn't work. The person got even more angry. And so then the conversation might start to deepen from there, right? Okay, so it sounds like you stabbed that person with your energy. How could you allow anger and still create more connection, more opportunity, more openness in that moment? How could you express the anger that's there, let someone in further without putting it on them? And so maybe then the person goes and tries something different the next time and is like, oh man, as you said that, I got really angry. So instead of making their anger about that person, they're practicing just sharing the truth, which is in this moment, I'm angry. Or maybe they're just like, oh, in this moment, I'm angry. And they breathe that. And as you practice with that, what's going to happen is they are going to be able to allow the connection that's always there to exist in partnership with whatever else is showing up in the space. That's where transformation can happen. There's one other part here. Maybe a sip of tea will jog my memory. Oh, this is also the process by which art gets created, by which we become artful. So everyone would love to be able to just share their anger in like a responsible, beautiful way that doesn't get slime on that person over there and allows them to move it through their system and blah, blah, blah. But the way we get there is we start by practicing and being clumsy. I have, I'll just grab a couple here. I have miniatures that I used to paint because I'm not playing this game so much anymore. I'll just grab a couple of them so I can show you. So I played a game called Star Wars Imperial Assault, which is a wicked game. It's so cool. It's super complex. And it's like a tactical kind of combat Star Wars game. So you have all these interlocking pieces of cardboard that fit together and form like a map, like the famous, I guess the Death Star, where, you know, there's a garbage compactor. That's one of the scenarios. And then the heroes get dropped in. So whoever's playing, and then I'm the games master, I drop in the Imperial forces. So I was painting these little miniatures that I'm going to show you. And when I first started, I really like these Imperial Guards. They're like, first of all, they just look ominous. They were cool in the game. They do some badass stuff. I like the red robes. I like that they're simple to paint. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I was really scared to start creating this art because I was like, what if I ruin the Imperial Guard, who I think is cool? So you can see This is him painted. That's not a particularly good paint job. There's not really any shading or anything going on. He's kind of just matte, flat. I managed to get like that little silver sword thing, and I painted his visor black. And that's what I had at first. I had to be willing to put paint on the canvas and do it poorly, which I did. It's not horrible. It's just like, oh, it could have been cooler. And then as time got on, I learned to do a much better job shading. So you can see this guy who's a mercenary, kind of looks like an orc, but he is a Star Wars creature. You can see all the shading that I got in his little, I don't know, what is that, a singlet? Is he wearing a unitard? You can see like the details, the shading on his shoulder pads, even the musculature in his legs. There's shading all through there. His face is much more defined. So that when I started this, I wanted to be here, but I couldn't. This was the path to this. And so we have to make our way through it. That's how art gets created. I'll show you one more, which is a Tuscan Sand Raider. These guys are some of my favorite miniatures that I painted. First of all, these Tuscan Sand Raiders are such a mystery to me. I wish the camera would focus. Oh, there you go. Yeah. What's the deal with their face? Do they breathe? They've got this weird ass weapon, but I love the shading on their robes there. And they got all their little kit in the back and stuff. They're badass. Andrew, I got to tell you, in Imperial Assault, hey, focus on my face, please, camera. In Imperial Assault, there we go. It's a slog for like the heroes. There's basically like 50-50 at any point along the way, whether or not they're going to win or lose. And it's cool because it's not like you lose, the game's over. You lose that scenario, and then you look in the book and it's like, great, they lost, so now they're into this scenario. So they get into a new branch and they get different rewards. Amazing game. I miss playing it. The only trouble is it takes forever to set up, and I've got like boxes of this stuff, and all my miniatures now are just on display in my little cabinet over here. And yes, Andrew, I love The Mandalorian. It's incredible. I can't wait for season 3. I've also been watching, Bay and I watched all 3 of the original, I've heard it called the Dollars trilogy, or also The Man with No Name, which is the trilogy that had Clint Eastwood become a household name, really famous. And it's probably the most famous set of Westerns. They were like the beginning of the spaghetti Western phase. And it's cool because watching those movies, immediately we're like, oh boy, you can totally see how The Mandalorian was so inspired by old spaghetti Westerns, like the long shots, close up of faces, incredible music score, even like the buildings, the towns they walk through. It all feels very like, it was like watching a prequel to The Mandalorian, like thousands and thousands of years before in a different galaxy. Okay. What topics do we have left? Having an impact with your art versus selling out. That seems like a good one. We've kind of started talking about art. So Jess Blue said that she's kind of exploring this currently with her coach. Can I talk or elaborate on having an impact with your art versus selling out? So selling out, hold on, let me just get some words around this because some other places I can see this happening for people. First of all, we use selling out pejoratively, which I think is a bit problematic because then it makes it hard for us to acknowledge when we're doing what we're going to talk about. So we're not actually talking about selling out, you sold out, you suck, blah, blah, blah. That's not really for us to decide. We use that with an artist. Oh, they sold out. Well, only the artist knows whether that's true or not. They get to choose. The thing I'm more conscious of is our art as an honest, genuine expression of ourself in the world versus trying to perform something so as to, like, through our art, so as to create a result. So this can get a bit nuanced, as everything I seem to talk about does. I've heard about that one, Evan, and I've added that to my list too, especially because it's mentioned in Rounders, which is one of my favorite movies. So an example of this is in writing, and we'll talk about the coaching profession because this happens a lot. When people first become coaches, they're like, how do I develop an online presence? That's a big concern. Doesn't need to be the concern. concern, the real opportunity in this profession is, how can I connect with people? Where do I like connecting with people? How do I connect them more? Very first module of our of the Creating Clients course. Learn to connect with people. Let's teach you how to actually connect rather than the performative version of connection. If you're wondering what I mean by the performative version of connection, it's what tends to happen at networking events. A lot of people are like, why do networking events suck? Because you're all going and performing connection. You know what's fun? Go to a networking event and just connect with people, free of any agenda. It's fun. It's like going to a wedding. It can be just as much fun. You get to drink, you get to meet a bunch of people, you can be whoever the hell you want to be yourself, but be whatever you want to be. What I like to do at networking events when I find myself there these days is I go up to people. I just scan for someone who's someone by themselves, and I walk up and I go, "Hello, would you like to network with me?" And then I have a great laugh and I have fun. And if I'm having fun, the other person will probably start to have fun, and then it's way more fun. So that's why they suck. So coaches start out, how do I create an online presence? How do I blah, 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 blah? How do I get people to come to me? So already we've started down this path. Their focus is not what's real for me, what's true for me, what would be an expression of my art in whatever medium I find myself in. Where they're looking is, how do I hook people? How do I draw people in? How do I create an online presence? There is a fuck ton of stuff being sold to you constantly that models this and that promises to sell you this, that will teach you this. So that is very seductive. Seductive isn't the right word because it doesn't feel like being seduced. It feels like being hit over the head with a hammer. But it's very hit you over the head with a hammer. It's very it's addictive, I guess. It has a powerful draw. Because if you see the same thing all the time telling you to do this, if you see a bunch of people doing this, and the people doing this have a vested interest in telling you it's working for themselves. So they're selling to you the illusion that the way they're doing things is really working, which then, it just kind of feeds in on itself. So coaches are like, I got to figure out how to connect. How do I draw people in? How do I connect with people in such a way that they will want my services? That will never be as satisfying as serving the world through your art. It also requires much more trust to serve the world through your art, because you have to trust that you have to learn, really, you have to develop the trust that who you are and who you be is sufficient. That's the game, and it's the only game, really. So I was talking to one coach who was considering doing the last iteration of the Creating Clients course, and he everything I kept providing him kept going back into like the performative version of connecting. I was like, well, like the heart of this is what we're really teaching you here is how to simply be yourself and connect with people. And he was like, oh yeah, totally. It's great. I've heard this before. I just need to hear it again. And I need to really figure out, like, how do I write in such a way that connects with people? No, no, you've got the cart before the horse. The game is, who am I and what is there to write from that place? Set aside connecting with people. People can't connect with you if you're not putting yourself forward into the space. And so this is really what I would hold to be true of all art, is that it requires tremendous courage to put our stuff into the world. Because first of all, not everyone's going to like it, so they'll reject some of it. Second, it's easy to get lured into going after results as a primary thing. And so as soon as we get rejected, that tells us like, well, fuck, that's not creating the results. I don't want to keep doing that. Or we put our art in the moment into the world and that does generate results. And then next day we try to force more of that art. Oh, people really resonated with that, so I should do this. And so this is the tension of living our life as an artist, is that the results will always have a pull. And until we develop and continue to develop a deep trust in ourself, spirit, and others, that pull is going to be strong. And over time, as you learn to trust that all there really is to do is to show up and be you and to put more of that into the space, you're going to keep being pulled down that path that says, get the results, do what you need to do to get the results. That's where selling out happens. And the most tragic thing that I see occur is where people go down that path to generate particular results, and then they succeed. This is like when people, I was very lucky in that I totally failed out of university, worked at McDonald's for a year before realizing that sucks, went back to university and just decided to do the courses that I seemed to really enjoy. And that found me into a degree in computer science, which I loved. I really enjoyed computer science. And so I was fortunate because I'd chosen my degree haphazardly, it seemed at the time, to be something I enjoyed doing. I had a lot of people, friends in my cohort taking that degree because it would make them money, which is the same version of like writing because that will generate clients or doing something because it's going to get you X. And when you succeed at that, it creates a vicious cycle. It reinforces you to continue doing that thing, which has you keep doing stuff that doesn't set your soul alive. And so that's another example where we're trying to force something into our lives rather than allowing the truth that's there to come forward. Um, I think that the great tragedy of a lot of the people selling these services to coaches, I sell leads, I generate blah, I do this, I help people just like you do X, Y, and Z. I think the great tragedy is not when they don't work, not when the coaches pay money and they don't work. I think the great tragedy is when the coaches pay money and they do work. Because then those coaches get stuck in that cycle and they work with their business coach or they work with their whatever coach. It's not to say that there's not an opportunity with those sort of coaches, but they just get trapped in this and they keep doing more and more stuff that's not true to themselves. And they get burnt out and tired. And then they think coaching's garbage. And then they go back to something else. They go back to whatever, missing the opportunity that was there for them, missing the real gift that might have been available in this profession. Evan, writing. My writing with the biggest impact often is without a lot of thought and spur of the moment on my phone. Always a surprise. 100%. Yeah. Often my writing that has the most impact is often it's the pieces I'm like, this is brilliant. And then no one responds to those. And there's other times where I'm just like, cannot seem to write anything in the morning. And I just sort of jot some thoughts down. I've got like 4 failed attempts in the morning before I switch to a new topic. And I'm like, whatever, I write this and I put it up and it's like amazing and it resonates so much with people. We don't know how our art is going to land over there. That's the world's job to share with us. Most of us try to preemptively figure that out so we can then deliver into this fabricated future. But that doesn't work. That's a recipe for neglecting your truth. And that's not that much fun. I wanted to share a story at this point before we wind down. Let me just see if I can remember it. Mm. Oh, um, yeah, super interesting. I guess, I don't know if this is a random story, but the first coach I ever worked with, so grateful because he brought me into this work and he gave me 2 fantastic pieces of advice, not coaching, advice. And that was hire and start working with a coach, get training, non-negotiables. And so I'm so grateful for that. And so I hired and I worked with him and it was fine. It was the coaching that I was up for at that point. But in hindsight, it wasn't transformative. It was largely transactional. It was a lot of like, doing exercises, stuff like that. It was all fine and good. Anyhow, I reached out to him recently because I want to just express some gratitude and acknowledgement for the journey he had. And I was so disappointed. So the response I got was, he's now in Australia. He's got a kid and he's a professor. I think he's teaching at a university. I believe he coached and then shortly after I kind of like moved on from him, I think he stayed in the profession for like another year and then kind of moved on. Um, I don't know that he ever really got the magic of coaching for himself. It's not for me to say, but that's my hunch. And I think he intellectually got it, but didn't have the lived-in experience because that's what got created with me and him as well. And anyhow, so I reached out to him and I was like, "Hey, man, so great to see you're doing great. I hope you're awesome. I'd love to just catch up on the phone. Would you be up for that?" And his response was, "Hey, good to see you're still in the profession. I'm sure you're great at it. I'm in Australia now, have a kid. It's hard to connect with the time zone, but if there's ever anything I can provide or support you need, let me know." And it was a couple of things happened from that interaction. The first one was like, my human side was like, fuck you, make time for me. The next thing that happened was sort of um, seeing myself in in his response. And what I mean by that is seeing like the Adam that had initially started work with this guy, like who I was when I was a lawyer and how I was being. I could see so much of that version of Adam in his response, which was sort of like, time's scarce, it's precious, I got my stuff here, it's nice to hear from you, now on your way. Like kind of pretty cursory. um, I got other stuff to do. Again, it's totally fine, right? But all the same. And so that happened. And then the third thing that happened was I really saw the ground I'd taken in my own life, not kind of like because I was better than him, but from seeing myself in his response and then seeing like, wow, time really used to be that scarce and significant for me too. And who knows, when I have a kid, everything may change and that may be exactly how I respond. But at least where I sit today, um, there's always time. There's always time. There's an abundance of time available. That doesn't mean if someone says, can we talk? I schedule them today because time's abundant. So it doesn't have to be today, but it does mean like I can take the time to respond to someone. I would love to hear from the people that reach out. Um, so yeah, it was really interesting, and it left me feeling like my hunch, my experience, I should say, which doesn't mean it's right. It was just my experience was, oh, I suspect for this guy, coaching was largely transactional, intellectual, and kind of a little surfacey. And not that he didn't have value, but like, you know, um, that's the level of depth that coaching got in for him. And so, yeah, it was a little disappointing because I really wanted to express some love his way. And so in response, I just said, hey, man, I really get it. Sounds like time's pretty precious for you and having a kid. And I mean, that's all awesome. And there's nothing I need or wanted support with. I just wanted to acknowledge you and appreciate you for bringing me into this truly amazing profession. And no response to that. So it's all good, right? Gave it to him and provided that to him. But it's always nice when I reach out to a mentor. I really want to express love. And I think that response is part of why initially I learned to not do it. Like, what if I want to open my heart to someone and then I get a closed door? Fuck it. I just want to open my heart. So these days I'm in the practice of not making it too significant and just offering it with gratitude. Let's see, Andrew, how hard is it to get on a half an hour call if you want it from his side? I'm trying to, I think you're speaking to his scarcity of time. Is that what you're speaking to? Like, how hard really is it to get on a half hour call if you want it? Yeah. The other thing that I was present to is like, first of all, he might not want it. He might just have zero interest in catching up with me, which is fine. That's okay too. He's trying to be nice. But yeah, well, so be it. Okay, I think it's time we wind down. I'm going to give you an update on the Forge. I'm going to give you an update on who do you think you are. I'm going to go in reverse order. So no, I'm going to talk about the Forge first, and I'm going to talk about who do you think you are, and then we're going to finish up. So we have 4 spots remaining in the Forge. The leadership track is full. Don't worry, Evan, you're a part of that. And we have 4 spots remaining for our start in September. So we go from September to May. There's a break in December. Our cohort will be about, I think it's 18 people this year. So it's going to be a good size. We're going to have a beautiful retreat. It's going to be an incredible time together, and it's going to be truly transformative. And you're going to get to experience your own transformation. You're going to get to witness people in the practice of having their leadership developed and being leader. And you're going to get to witness me making mistakes, Bay making mistakes, all of our humanity. And you're going to fall in love with yourself and the people that you go through this work with at a level of depth far beyond what you probably have experienced up to this point. That ripples outwards into your life everywhere, I promise. So if that's something that interests you, you can go to this link and read about it. You can send me a message, be like, hey, you keep mentioning this stupid thing and it's annoying, but I also feel like I might want to do it. Can we talk? The answer is yes. I always have time for that conversation. So that's the Forge, 4 slots remaining. 2 is Who Do You Think You Are, which is the initially it was the Spectrums of Being, which sounded very mathy and kind of autism based. So we had the alpha edition of that, which there still are some copies. If you would like an early free alpha edition, you can let me know, message me, or send me an email. Who Do You Think You Are is the follow-up, the actual published book that I'm working through. So that's Spectrums of Being kind of made bigger, better. It's going to be a gorgeous book. It's hardcover. It's got some graphics in it, not a ton, but just a few. And we go far more into depth on all of the different qualities of being. And so what happens in that book is we kind of talk about, like, let's look at connection. What are the shadow sides of connection? What does connection look like overexpressed? Oh, it's super extroverted, but all on the surface. What does connection look like underexpressed? Oh, it's super introverted and being really content not being with people. But both of those are a reflection of the underlying truth that the person is connection. That's what they thrive in. It's a great example, right, of if you relate to yourself as introverted and are comfortable doing that and you want a breakthrough in connection, it's about allowing yourself to be the connection that you already are rather than having to layer something on top. So I'd rewritten that, made it much bigger and better, gave it the first copy to the editor, got his notes and integrated all that, gave the second version to the editor. He's given me some really hefty notes now that'll take me about a couple of weeks. So that's going to be what's going on now. And then I imagine my designer's working on the internal layout, and then we should be publishing in about 6 weeks is my hunch, if everything slots in and goes according to plan. You'll be able to get in a beautiful hardcover book. It's going to look really nice. And my hope is that it becomes a reference for your desk when you're sitting with a client or when you're leading someone and you're trying to figure out, like, oh man, I can't seem to figure out why they're being such a bonehead, or I really feel stuck with this person. That you can read the book through once and then you can kind of leaf through and be like, okay, what is there's a chart that lets you look up like their shadows, and they're like, shadows, here's the actual way of being. What's the breakthrough for them? Oh, how do I work with these people? How do I support them in creating oh, got it. So really light a lot of the way for the work that there is to do to actually bring people's soul, spirit, and being into the world. It's going to be a beautiful thing. I'm really excited for it. A lot of my heart and soul going into this book. Then it'll be published and I'll be bored of it and I'll do something new. Okay, from me, from these guys, from this cup of tea, have an amazing weekend. Love you guys. Thanks for hanging out. Peace.